Welcome to week 3 of European Tour Picks and Bets. Skylar, Hoke here with you. You can find me on Twitter at SkyHookDFS, but you might also be listening us to the audio version. We have recently launched on the Mayo Media Network, The Mix, which is daily fantasy sports and picks. The Mix. You can search that in all of your podcast platforms. That is now available. So if you didn't want to look at myself and my partner Tom Jacobs' lovely faces here,
which I wouldn't blame you. It's one of those things, isn't it?
Tom is sporting a new hat every week. I mixed it up here with a little haircut for us. So, but Tom, let's bring you in. What's going on?
Yeah, I mean, it was a big week last week. Adrian Aus saw himself on the leaderboard in the second round and shit the bed. So. That's par for the course of my picks at the moment. But, it was really impressive to see Paul Casey after, people think it's been a while. It hasn't been that long, but I think he's almost like a second stage of his career right now. I think that he's one of those sort of back-to-back Valspars, and that's really helped him kick on, right? And now he comes back to European Tour. And I think there's an added pressure, which I think he spoke to about him performing at a higher level on that stage. And he should. This is a guy that's been around for a long, long time. Lee Westwood, that sort of time. And he was great. I mean, Robert McIntyre was a little bit disappointing. There's no two ways about it. But I still think Casey would have had some in the tank to really push all the way if he needed to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, he did speak so open about, putting the pressure on for a Ryder Cup appearance for him, knowing he doesn't play that much on the European Tour, how he has to elevate his game every single time. And I mean, that's what he did, to finish Saturday out with birdie eagle and then to really, step on it yesterday, and of course, I think both of us are Robert McIntyre fans and we really want him to get over the line in one of these massive events. And it's tough to evaluate kind of where he is. I mean, he's still so young. He's, only on his third year on the European Tour now, and arguably, definitely the best one of his class, now sees himself in the top 50 of the world, closing in on a Masters appearance. So it's so easy to be, hard on somebody who doesn't come through in those situations like we see with Tony Finau as of recent and all those conversations on the PGA Tour. But, just another week where McIntyre has cashed a big check, getting up in the world rankings. Now he's the top lefty in the world. So that's really fun to see for one of our favorite golfers.
And if anyone listens to the Lost Words podcast weekly, obviously you've just been on there as well. And one of the comparisons that Jason made on there was that he's kind of like Tyrrell Hatton in terms of attitude-wise. The potential's almost there as well. And the rookie season for McIntyre, I was always a little bit like, people are getting too excited. But when you look back at it, it was phenomenal, right? His second place finishes galore. He was right in contention all the time, anything but the win. And I just focused on the fact that he didn't win. And when you look back, I mean, he's probably got a higher potential you can see than what you saw in Hatton years ago. And Hatton's elevated his game to a whole new level. So there's no reason to think that McIntyre won't do the same. And if you listen to Jason again with the Open in 2 years' time, so I mean, yeah, just look out for that.
Absolutely. And with that, again, we're set it up. Unfortunately, after this week, we don't see the European Tour for a handful of weeks. We'll see a good amount of these guys, including McIntyre, if he does another good week at the WGC, now at the Concession Club here in Florida. But this is the last scheduled European Tour event for the next 5 weeks. So without further ado, let's really dive into this field. And it is the Saudi International, played at the Royal Greens Golf and Country Club. Par 70, just over 7,000 yards this week. And this field is loaded with the PGA Tours. Now, if you listen to Pat, he kind of said the pay to play fee for a lot of these guys that you're getting, the likes of DJ, Bryson, Finau, Victor Hovland, Kevin Na. I mean, this field is stacked up with some of the best players on the PGA Tour. And I think we just have to start with what we've seen here. And that was Bryson winning, 2 years ago. And then last year, GMAC winning. Are you going right to this PGA Tour, guys, at the top of the board, Tom?
I actually DJ won, didn't it, the first year? DJ went first.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Second.
Yes.
But Bryson has come over and played really well, and DJ obviously has gone first and second. And it's really surprised me. You say it's just over 7,000 yards, and yet it seems to be, other than Graham McDowell, everyone's just kind of bombed their way to places here, haven't they? And that seems to be the approach. If you can bomb it off the tee, make the putts, that's all you're going to need to do. It seems a pretty easy layout, desert sort of course, wind effects. It won't be too dissimilar to the past 2 weeks that we've seen. like we have the last 2 weeks, I'm going to leave the top, section alone. It's a lot harder to do this week. If anyone said to me, I'm just going to go full in on DJ or I'm going to go into Bryson, Tony Finau, no arguments here, but I'm going to start my card further down.
Yeah, I think you're right. And it is very, very difficult to look at the top of the board and think, man, what is the likelihood that one of DJ, like you said, he was the winner in 2019. Bryson had won at the Omega Dubai last week. So DJ, Bryson second, Tyrrell Hatton third. The talk of the world right now, Patrick Reed, another one of the guys up here, Tony Finau, Hovland are the 6 golfers under 20-1. And here we are saying, hey, I think it's more difficult to pick from that lot than just to say, hey, let's hope we get lucky with some of our longer shots, getting some places like we did with Lipsky week 1. If you bet Kanaya at top 10 last week, who we'll talk about a little bit later on, those odds are paying more than some of these winner prices. So I agree with you on me kind of going down the board. And I think we're going to get pretty deep actually with our first selections where, there's also a good picking from in this middle range. Did anyone stand out for you here?
Yeah, I mean, so for me, it was really hard to go and ignore Tommy Fleetwood at 25-1, Paul Casey 25-1 after winning so well last week. Sergio Garcia, you obviously liked last week, and I did as well. I just couldn't get there. Sergio's excellent. Tees green is superb. If it wasn't for the fact that he destroyed a bunker the first year, everyone would kind of love him here because he finished 6th last year as well. And he puts with his eyes shut now. If he can just shut his eyes when he gets in the bunker, he might not get so mad. Sergio would be the closest. He would be the closest for me at 28-1, but I'm still further down the board for me.
Yeah, and that's, I think Sergio probably is the one. Abraham Answers also from the field. If you want to go to McIntyre, in the 30s, I mean, I'm not going to fault you for making any selection realistically here. But the way I think it gets is it's all so similar, and at the lower odds, I think it's worth chancing and running our luck at these places. I mean, over, on your side of the world, you're getting books that are offering each ways up to 8 places, so if you're getting a quarter or a fifth of those odds up to 8 places, that's eliminating, pretty much a good chunk of this field and getting some still pretty strong odds on deeper golfers. So again, we talked the likes of the PGA Tour with some of this top of the board. Now there's, I believe, 1, if not 2 golfers who frequent the PGA Tour that are going to be the start of your card. Hit us with your first one.
Yeah, so my favorite bet of the week, and to be honest, it was first that it just jumped out to me as a big price, right? And there was nothing else to it. And that was Kevin Na. He came out at 66-1. I was confused. I was like, okay, there's all these PGA guys at the top everyone's raving about. This guy's won 4 times on PGA Tour since 2018. He's just won in Hawaii. I know that it's not the top grade event. I know he doesn't contend in majors, and I think that's why people forget about him because you don't see him that often. But he plays well where it suits him. And the reason I believe it could suit him this week is he loves the Paspalum surfaces. When the CIMB Classic was Paspalum before 2018, he thrived in that CIMB Classic event. He was second in 2014, third in 2015. And, what more evidence do you need? The guy can get hot with a putter. He would certainly be nearer the Graham McDowell profile as opposed to Dustin Johnson in terms of distance. But this guy, I mean, he's so good on the greens. He picks up his ball before he's even hit the hole. Like, that's probably cheating, actually. If you ask, Patrick Reed, he'd probably be picking that up. But, I just couldn't believe the price. I expected him to be around the 33-45-1 mark. You got guys like, I don't want to pick on people, but Abraham Answer is not one. Robert McIntyre's one in Cyprus. Christian Bezuidenhout, I think, is not going to be able to keep up with the scoring. That's the sort of price I'd expect him to be. And at 66-1, I'm happy to dive in.
Yeah, I mean, I looked back. We had the conversation on your podcast, Lost for Words, today, and it's where I thought about when I bet on Kevin Na at the Sony, hitting that 80-1, and what was a reason. I didn't think it was as much of a course fit. I think it was better. I think there than what it is maybe potentially this week. But the exact thing I wrote was hitting the board in 3 of his last 33 events, with 2 of those being victories, 80-1 and 20-1 each way. So, a little bit longer there is double what his output had been. And now we're adding another win. So that's saying 4 times in his last 35 events, he is cashing the each way ticket. And to get him at 66-1 now in a far less strength of field, as we go deeper down the board event, That to me screams value. And I'm glad you talked some sense into me and getting Kevin Na on my card as well, because we're going to agree on that one. Absolutely. But this next one, I think you're on an island with.
Yeah, I mean, it was met with crickets on the podcast. It's been met with crickets on Twitter as well. Justin Rose is 60 to 1, 66 to 1 in places as well. And I think he's one of these guys, right? I've been to the well with too many times. He's actually let me down. I've watched him lose a playoff to Keegan Bradley, which was, killer for a double with Fitzpatrick on the other side of the pond as well. And he used to bet him the Masters at 20 to 1. And that's the thing. I see him as that guy, right? He's a former world number one. He's a major contender most years. But even when you go back, I think his struggle is being highlighted as something that's, unsalvageable. And when you look at it, I mean, he was eighth after 3 rounds last week. He had a terrible final round. There's no getting away from that. His ball striking was awful. Green regulations poor. But he's got a short memory. He can forget that. Talent alone, he's better than 66 to 1, 60 to 1. I mean, if he was 40 to 1, I just wouldn't even consider it. I just don't need to. I don't need the stress. He could let me down. He can miss the cut. Has missed the cut in his debut here. But at 66 to 1, I'm happy to roll with a guy that's been, at the top of the world rankings in his career.
Yeah. And I just think if you compare the two, that's where I loaded mine up with a little bit more European Tour centric guys as we got a little deeper down here. Comparing him and Na, to me, what the strike rate Na has shown is a little bit more value. And of course, that you're on it there too. I'm going to go in the 60s to a golfer who, his numbers as of recent on the European Tour, long term, he's one of the better drivers of the ball, and his recent putting has picked up a decent bit, including, gaining over a stroke per round in Omega Dubai last week. And that is none other than Lucas Herbert, who opened up at 60 to 1. If you look at Herbert, his victory last year came at the Omega Dubai Classic, which, he was repeating or trying to repeat at last week. But he's pretty steady in the wins. That tournament there was actually won in single digits, I do believe, as those wins got crazy on the weekend. This course is going to have wind playing a factor. It's why G-Mac, kind of was in the place he was last year. Even 10 to 15 miles an hour when you're on the kind of the coast and some water that's in play, that's going to get some factors in. So I think Herbert's game sets up extremely well for him. He's now cracked I think he's 64th in the world now. So, Herbert is on a pretty solid trajectory. So I think getting him still at the 60s, he was the most popular play on DraftKings last week by a good amount. So he's now, coming off a 22nd, was inside the top 30 here last year, kind of converging factors for a pretty solid number, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think the thing you touched on there, he's so highly owned last week, and people are probably going to give up on him because he didn't do what they expected him to do, and the field is so strong. The two things you touched upon there was one was that GMAC won last year, right? As much as we keep talking about the strength of the top of the market and how it's so hard to avoid them, GMAC came through and won. That's why I wouldn't give up on Rose. I wouldn't give up on Kevin Na. There's no reason to say Lucas Herbert can't win. It's going to be harder. They've got to go and take DJ down. It's going to be Bryson who's going to be there. It's a difficult thing to ask. But Lucas Herbert, one of the things that's underrated about him is his tee game. People don't really see him as this guy that hits it a long way, but he does. He gains strokes off the tee, hits it straight most of the time. And, that's the perfect recipe for success here.
And that's, if you look at the leaderboard in 2019, the year DJ won, you see just a absolute collection of bombers after him. Even Minwoo Lee, who had, relatively no professional, let alone European Tour experience, came inside the top 10. Hao Tong Lee was right up there chasing. So again, those guys, their biggest strength is they're off the tee. So in my opinion, that's how we continue to do it. And when we lead right into the next guy, after running, some kind of field strength averages and looking into the off the tee game of none other than Laurie Cantor at 80 to 1. Cantor is somebody who we know melts when he gets to the top of the leaderboard on Sundays, and which is tough to sit here and say when he looks into the eyes of Bryson and DJ and Finau, and they're in that final group together. Is he going to be able to, really come through in that moment? Times to tell. He's put himself there multiple times, of course, has not came through just yet. But again, 80 to 1, you get that a quarter of the odds, 20 to 1 in the each way. I think Cantor can really mix it up with his style of game here, because off the tee, he is really, really strong.
And the thing is, as well, is what I keep going back to is that if you like Laurie Cantor, if you believe in him, which many people do, and I do to an extent, maybe not so much as anybody else, but I do like him this week. I think I said last week that the course last week would suit better than the week before, and I think this one will suit better as well because his off the tee game will let him relish, will let him prosper, and for me, it's a case of if you bet him now, this is the last chance you're going to get again in the 80-1 or 90-1, 100-1, whatever it is that you've got, because when it comes to the regular European Tour events where the PGA Tour guys are going back, he's going to be 25-1, 20-1, 33-1. So if you want to take him now. It is hard to see him winning, but you don't know, do you? I mean, could he be inspired by the type of competition? Could it rally him? Really and truly, he didn't do an awful lot wrong in Portugal. It's just that George Coetzee was so good. There's different moments. He has melted at times, and he does have the weakness of a putter. But how many guys do we say that have great ball striking and he's off the tee? One of the drives he hit last week, I can't remember where it was, but it was just on a short par 4, and he was just right up there. And he's just absolutely superb with that driver.
Yeah, I mean, that's again, we say team no putt. That's a popular type of thing. You always like to say if the caddy could only putt for your guys, who would be the best golfer in the world. I think that ultimately is, the most variant part of the game of golf. And anybody can run hot with the putter. Even the worst of golfers in the world on the greens seem to find its level to where they can get to be field average, for a week or two. And that's the week. If you continue that same ball striking game of why we attack them, why we keep going to the well. And when they pay off, it can be in these type events at deeper odds, similar to a Luke List type. Again, that Mayo is such a fan of a Ben Ann type this week at Waste Management, one of his favorite events. That's the exact same mantra. Now we're getting that number with Laurie Cantor in this type of field. So, you hope it runs hot on the greens and he can make some of those 5 to 8 footers that he puts himself in position to so much. But let's go now, I think, into the hundreds a little bit, right? I know you're coming off of somebody who had a really strong ball striking week last week.
Yeah. So Alexander Levy, he's a guy that he's such a confidence player, right? And last year he was coming back off an injury. He was having some swing changes. And he said, once he finally said, I'm just going to go back to swinging naturally, he was great. He finished in the showdown, and he was 7th. Then he finished 6th down at the Alfred Dunhill in South Africa just before Christmas. And then he's back-to-back top 25s now, and his 6th and 10th, I think, is tee to green. He's hitting the ball well. He had that great celebration when he made the hole-in-one a couple of weeks ago. He's such a confidence player. I mean, his first win was at the Volvo China Open in 2014. He beat Tommy Fleetwood, Ian Poulter, other guys that week. He can take down the best. He hasn't taken down the likes of Dustin Johnson and Bryson and things like that. But if he's his biggest obstacle, but as long as he can, get over his own game and just be in control, I don't think he's scared of anybody else.
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. If you look at the numbers from last week, him finding and being a foreign player, he was gaining 0.7 per round. So just about just under 3 strokes total ball striking in Abu Dhabi. He then picked that up in Dubai, gaining over 10 strokes ball striking. So combining the off the tee plus approach on the tournament, which would have been 4th best last week of guys that are teeing up, with Casey and Sergio being 2 of the guys ahead of him, and someone being just ahead of him as well, who you're going to mention here shortly. So attacking those guys coming into form. And that often, on the PGA Tour, when golfers, their level of games are, you can find it a little bit more quickly, it seems, on the PGA Tour with the talent that those guys possess. On the European Tour, at times, you see golfers get hot for maybe a month stretch and really carry over, and then they might fall off like Levy did, I mean, his example of it. But now when you're finding him on the up and you were also getting him at the number that you do, I mean, he was, I think, 160-1 on DraftKings Sportsbook this morning. So there are some numbers if you want to attack that angle. I'm going to go back to the well on who we talked about, who was the former world golf amateur number 1, who then had his first top 10 on the European Tour last week, Takumi Kanaya. So if you look at Kanaya, 100-1 this week. If you were sweating at the immediate kickoff of golf on what was Wednesday night here, but Thursday morning in Dubai, Kanaya was 2 under through 2. He was coming out of the gates hot. He ended up bogeying 4 more holes on that front 9, and then he found 4 more birdies to close on that day. His short game was really, really lights out all week long. He is somebody, again, that you are now thinking of, I liked how you said it before. He doesn't have that scar tissue. He really hasn't been in the situations that a lot of golfers have, especially because he's so young in his career, made maybe 1 or 2 PGA Tour starts, qualified for a major, just hasn't made consistent appearances on any tour besides the Japanese Golf Tour, which he was so successful on. So if we're going to get these numbers, I'm going to continue to risk it off somebody who had such a good week last week.
Well, and this is, like you say there, you alluded to, my thought process was he hasn't thrown anything away. He's not, the only thing he knows at the moment success. He's world amateur number 1. He's gone out of Japan Tour and won, which again, people overlook, but compared to him, he's a young kid and he's gone and beat some really experienced pros in the strong Japanese tour. Dunlop Phoenix is no joke for that tour. I likened it to the fact of Ryo Ishikawa. He was sort of same sort of level at his age, wasn't he? And people got really hyped about him, and he played really well for a period of time on the PGA Tour, and then fell away. Hideki Matsuyama's gone the other way and kicked on. Probably wanted to win a major, but hasn't quite done it. There's a lot of pressure on these guys. Asian players get a lot of media, hype and things like that, and sometimes they fall away. And you hope that doesn't happen to him. But like we just said about Laurie Cantor, this guy is not going to be 100-1 in many fields, and I'd like to see how he would deal with going down the stretch with Dusty, going down the stretch with Bryson, because I expect he probably will. He's a young guy, and they're the best. That's what he's aspiring to be. But you just never know how they're going to cope in that situation.
Yep, and that's, again, you take the risk with the number, knowing that is, and again, the protection of each way. I mean, every single bet that we've offered this week has been deeper than 60-1. Anytime those are kind of on my card, I'm always securing that with the each way or the top 5 bet if you have it separate here in the States, whatever it may be. And those odds, I mean, top 10 on Kanaya was still paying, last week over 10-1. So those type of bets, still can keep your weeks alive, save your card, still squeak out a profit. So I think when we're getting deeper here, this is kind of that angle to attack. And I know you're going to go with another golfer who just came off of a really, really strong week ball striking. It seems like he does it every single week. Is this another Cantor type deep odds? It's about time for this golfer to come through, I believe.
Yeah, so I've got 2 in this sort of range. And the first one I'll go to is Ryan Fox. Okay, he was 6th on approach last week and he was 22nd tee to green overall. And the main thing for me is he had a 6th place finish on debut and then followed up with a 27th place finish. And the 27th was really kind of a struggle towards the end. He finished with a second round 75 and that kind of derailed him. So he obviously likes the course. He likes it when it's a bit more wide open. He hits plenty of good strong drives, but they're not the straightest, right? So you can't guarantee he's going to do it. But he's someone that clearly has shown a liking to the course. We've had two starts here, 6th and 27th. Should have been better than 27th as well. Take a chance because he was so good with his irons last week. He was so good tee to green generally. He's a bit wide of the mark, like I say, with the driver. And the next guy is Sean Crocker, and he is the epitome of a guy that needs his caddies putt for him. He's had 4 starts of 9th or better tee to green, and he just hits the ball beautifully. And we talk about the Kurt Kitayamas of this world. We talk about Brooks and Peter Uline back in the day. These guys come over, David Lipsky, who've been on the last couple of weeks. These American guys come over to European Tour and takes it like ducks of water, and he really did do that. But now it's time for him to take a step up, and I think doing that in a field of people that he's aspiring to be on the PGA Tour. There's no 2 ways about it. That's where he wants to be. That's where the American guys want to go, and he wants to mix it with those, and it's a good opportunity for him to do so.
Oh, 100%. And again, if we question, the winning ability, I mean, it's difficult to hit a winner anytime in golf, let alone somebody at the type of odds of Crocker 200-1, with Cantor even in the 80s. But another great way to attack them is on DraftKings. I mean, Crocker is 6,700 this week. That to me, a great value there. Cantor only 7,500. So, the safety, if we're attacking these guys in the outright markets, of course, we like them to make the cut, and play the weekend. And that's really all you need at some of those deeper prices to be be able to have, a profitable week on DraftKings when you're paying down the board like that. And when we're getting really deep here, I'm going to I'll say my first one, which is the annual selection. Every week, it's coming. And it was almost there last week. If you woke up on Friday morning, you saw Guido Migliozzi going low. And I mean, he was 6 under through 17 holes, nailing putts. I mean, I think he hit a 15-footer for birdie, was having a 10-foot par save, gets on the last hole of the day on Friday. And of course, 3 putts it, has to sleep on the bogey, T9. I think he got into tied for 7th at one point. And then he ends up outside the top 10. Of course, the weekend doesn't go his way, but the start of Migliozzi's run, they're giving us numbers, folks. 300 to 1 again for Guido. It's just something I'm going to keep taking. At one point last year, I think he got down to 40 to 1. And that's, you saw it almost in Phoenix again. Siwoo in this similar style of what Pat bets Siwoo every single week. Siwoo's already back up to 80 this week. Guido, they're not giving us 300. Of course, he didn't come through with a win, but the ball striking is rounding back into form. He shows up on the leaderboards. Have I gotten you into a Guido fan yet?
I love Guido. I was really impressed with him, and although I don't get to betting very often, there was times 2 years ago when he first came out that you thought, this guy's got it. We're looking at a Molinari type, whether it's Eduardo or Francesco. You don't know quite what level they are, but he was, you've got the Paratores of this world. They're all Italian guys, but it's hard to know what his potential is. I think he's a brilliant player, and I think that when he gets in the mix, apart from last week, but generally speaking, when he gets in the mix, he's rock solid, and I think that's a really good trait to have. Although it's been a lower events in Kenya and Belgium, he's shown that he can get the win, and that's really important. And 350 to 1, you're not asking for a lot to happen. There's a couple of guys, Ashton Wu down here, I really like at 250 or 200. I'm not sure what price is over there, but these guys, I liked Wu last week, and he's hitting the ball pretty well. They just like this desert golf, and Guido likes his part of the world as well. And why not a 350 to 1?
Yeah, and that's, again, I think if you continue to bet the same, absolute long shot over time, if you trust his ability that they're going to pay you back. It doesn't take much. It takes 1 or 2 top 5s in the year to pay out your weekly bet on Guido. So hopefully the listeners are following through, because it's coming one of these weeks here on these deep odds for us. And then I'll finish out my card with one more long shot. And again, we've talked about golfers, I've liked to be early on kind of in their careers. I like to see them come out onto the scene. This is another golfer who has very little European Tour experience. He was a Walker Cup member. So this is none other than Harry Hall. So Harry Hall is a golfer who had limited European starts after he was gifted a couple of sponsors exemptions. In those starts, he came out at the Alfred Dunhill Links Championship. So again, the big one, the big Alfred Dunhill, where you're rotating between St. Andrews and the really strong events. He came out and finished 15th in that event, and literally his professional debut. I mean, to do that on that stage, I mean, that is, a huge type of performance. He shot a 65 on Sunday there to get himself inside the top 20. So Harry Hall does that. He comes out, and then at the South African Open finishes 12th the next week. So a really strong performance. And then he leaves himself with no status anywhere, and he has to Monday qualify into Korn Ferry Tour events. He keeps at it, keeps going. Finally is able to get in a couple events, finishes a year with 3 top 10 finishes on the Korn Ferry Tour in his final 6 events. And then he goes and gets a sponsor's exemption into the American Express, makes the cut, plays the weekend, finishes out his week with an eagle. So Harry Hall at 300 to 1 to me, again, the talent, the upside. If you look at the golfers that are down here, we like David Lipsky for a reason, that he had shown so much success on the Korn Ferry Tour. Well, he had, guaranteed starts. He had status. This is different for Harry Hall. So to prove himself with 3 top 10s on the Korn Ferry Tour, the likes of who's around him do not have that same pedigree right now with their game. So I am all on the Harry Hall train this week.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I wanted to say on the previous podcast, is you identified Lipsky of his Korn Ferry Tour form, and I think a lot of people were worried about how that's going to translate. They don't quite know how it's the same with Challenge Tour to European Tour, and it's the same from Korn Ferry to PJ. No one knows quite what's going to happen. We've seen with Will Zalatoris, if you're superb on the Korn Ferry Tour, you'll take it to the next level. The margins are so narrow now. And Harry Hall, like you say, he's tied 15th on debut at the Alfred Dunhill Links, and he shot 70 on the opening round and just got better and better throughout the week. That's a comfortability thing. Goes to the next week and goes 12th in the South African Open. Like Kanaya, no scar tissue as of yet. Why not take a chance? I mean, I'm going to jump on board with you at 300-1 because why not? I mean, he's a guy that I want to see do well. He's not local to me, but he's local in terms of English. And there doesn't need to be a lot to happen for it to be a successful bet, right? Yes, I appreciate that. Can he win? What's the winning upside? It's hard to tell because you wouldn't have said Graham McDowell was going to win last year. That's I always reference back to that the market was so strong last year. There's a couple of extra guys in there this year. Tony Finau's here, Hovland's here, but it was a strong event. It was a strong event, and Graham McDowell came out of it. And if Harry Hall can get the bit between his teeth, which we know he can do, then why not give him a go?
Yeah, I'm ready for him to stare down DJ on the 18th green and knock in his birdie putt to beat him and not even.
And he's another flat cap wearer as well, isn't he? A bit
yeah.
Bryson,
oh yeah, he rocks the Scully. He looks like he'd be on Peaky Blinders. It's perfect. So I am all about Harry Hall. So that's my card for the week. Let's have you recap yours, Tom, and then I'll close us out.
Yeah, so my favourite, really strong bet is Kevin Na. I think that he's just the odds are just ridiculous on him for someone who's playing so on the PGA Tour. I'm on Rose Island this week, which currently is a bad place to be, but we shall see at the end of the week. I will take a lot of, I will bask in a lot of glory if he performs well.
Please do.
Everyone's writing him off. Alexander Levy, another one who kind of jumps back to me straight away. And then I don't know quite what to do with Sean Crocker and Ryan Fox yet. I don't know what the winning upside is for them, but certainly top 10, certainly DraftKings. I think they're good plays.
Perfect. Yep. Love your moves. And then I'll be on Lucas Herbert, 60-1. I am tailing you with Kevin Na. Let's run it back with Na, 66-1. Laurie Cantor, 80-1. We love that 7,500 on DraftKings. Takumi Kanaya, 100-1. Let's see if he can improve from top 10 to top 5 this week. And then again, we got our long shots. Guido Migliozzi, 300-1. And then Harry Hall week at 300-1. We'll be rounding out our card. So again, 2 forums that you can find this podcast. And if they're going to fill up the European Tour schedule, which our fingers are crossed for, you're going to find us here again. So YouTube, please press the subscribe button for us. This is the Mayo Media Network European Tour Picks and Bets. And then now this is available in all podcast formats. So if you went on Daily Fantasy Sports, Picks and Bets, The Mix is how you can find us. iTunes, Spotify, whatever you may need to listen to for those platforms. We have it there, known as The Mix. So Tom, exciting week ahead. Best of luck for us. Thank you again for joining me.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I say every week, guys, if you want to reach out to us on Twitter, we can't cover everybody. It's just impossible. But if you've got a guy you want to hear more about, let us know. We'll run the numbers. We've got things to look at that we can help you with. I know we had a couple of guys reach out last week and hopefully it paid off for them. So, yeah, let us know in the comments if you need any help. Twitter as well. And we can certainly help you there.
Absolutely. Let's have another week. Good luck, everybody.